Hello, old gun guy here. Welcome to my the mighty 338 Winchester Magnum and the mighty Versitile 338 Winchester Magnum video, and the Remington 700 BDL rifle. I'm going to talk about in this video. The first thing I discuss is the cartridge, the 338 Winchester Magnum, 33 caliber hunting rifle cartridge. Extremely, it's very popular, and it's extremely versatile. And if I could only have one hunting rifle, I would choose this caliber. If I could only own one rifle, obviously I own more than one rifle, so the the 338 is just an addendum. It was introduced. There's some wildcatters and experimentation, over the decades. Prior to the 1950s, Elmer Keith and I think Charles O'Neill and a few others experimented with heavier than 30 caliber Magnum cartridges, 33. Because once you went from 30 Magnum, 300 Magnum, like say H&H, which was popular back then, the next step up was 375 Holland and Holland Magnum, the famous African cartridge. The Remington company started introducing what would be considered then short action Magnum cartridges, 458 Winchester Magnum, a working man's elephant gun that an average person could purchase, and it wasn't $20,000, and go to Africa on a hunt. 264 Winchester Magnum, which is pretty much becoming obsolete these days as the 7mm Magnum has eclipsed it. In 1958 they came out the 338 Winchester Magnum. That's what we're going to discuss today. And a couple of years later, 62 I think, was the 300 Winchester Magnum, another wildly successful, very popular cartridge. The cartridge is based on a Grandpa 1912 375 Holland & Holland Magnum. It's a 375 caliber bullet, belted Magnum. It's got a belt around the head of the case, and the case head is 532 thousandths of an inch. That's pretty standard with the Magnums. What Winchester did was, I have a 338 Winchester Magnum here, along with its parent, the 375. What Winchester did was blow the case out, make it more straight so it's not as tapered as a 375 H&H, and give it a 25-degree shoulder. The H&H has a very small 12-degree shoulder, and originally the belts were for head spacing, not really necessary on the modern cartridges, but they shortened it so it would fit in the standard 30-06 length action, and the overall length is just like a 30-06. I have a 30-06 right here. They're the same length, overall length. Obviously, you see the 338's got a larger projectile. They loaded the case to 62 to 64,000 PSI max, and they came out with 3 original loads: a 200 grain PowerPoint, a 250 grain, I believe silver tip, Winchester did, and a 300 grain PowerPoint, and I believe they were rated at 2950 for the 200 grain. 250 was about 2,700 feet a second, and the 300 was like 2,450. I wrote a few notes down. I'll refer to them back and forth. I've actually had a 338 for 30 years. I've had this for 29 years, 1995. The 338 will shoot with most bullets almost as flat, or just as flat as the 300 Magnums. It became very successful, very popular. It's really powerful enough and versatile enough to take about 90 or 95% of the game on the planet. It's taken dangerous game in Africa, thin-skinned dangerous game like lion and leopards and tigers. with its various loadings, it's adequate to take any game in North America or South America or most places of the world. That's how versatile it is. If you should hand load the cartridge, you can make it even more versatile and have lighter loads with lighter bullets, 180 grain to 200 grain. You know, for deer hunting, that won't give you a heavy recoil like the heavier loads will. But it's an extremely versatile cartridge. Like I said, there was Wildcatters, you know, Elmer Keith, and they made all these Wildcat cartridges. It's said to be the inspiration for the 338 Win Mag, but you know, it could be just their own design. No one really knows for sure. It has an excellent reputation since it's been introduced on all kind of game: large Alaskan bears, brown bears, moose, elk, African plains game. With the proper bullet, you could probably take every game on the planet, or every type of animal, including elephants, if you had good shot placement and the correct projectile. And there are some solid projectiles made for the 338. They usually start at 375 and above. In Africa, some of the countries, depending on the game, there's caliber restrictions. You need a 375 H&H. In some countries, it's 40 caliber. But the 338 is extremely versatile. Like I said, if I could only have one rifle, this would cover everything. Yes, it does have more recoil than the 3006. Any shooter who practices with it or gets a little experience with it, it's not bad, unnoticeable, especially if you're hunting. Shooting any rifle off a bench, I've even shot painful 3006s off a bench, or ultralights. You know, if they're not in you're in an awkward position, you get punched by the gun. But a normal, you know, kneeling, sitting positions, off a backpack in a field, or offhand, the gun really doesn't have that much recoil. All these videos I do in the same format. I give you an explanation, history of what I'm discussing. The middle part is all the shooting demonstrations, chronograph, ammunition, accuracy, comparative energy, comparative recoil with a hunt rifle, and some other, you know, demonstrations. I can a terminal effects test, try and capture the bullet with an analog for a game animal, jugs of water, 3/4 inch sheets of plywood, simulating bone, and on and on. I've explained it in previous videos. But if the history doesn't, or the reloading portion doesn't interest you, just skip to the middle of the video and you can watch the shooting parts with this rifle. There's competitors to the 338 that have come out later. 340 Weatherby Magnum, bigger case, more powder, a lot more recoil. I've shot a 340 Weatherby, and for all that blast and recoil, you gain about 100 feet a second on every bullet weight over the 338, which is really not a lot in the scheme of things. The 338 and some of the lows is generating over 4,000 energy foot-pounds. There's a lot of energy. I have some ballistic numbers written down here, and I'll go over them out to 500 yards. And compared with 3006 trajectory and energy and velocity. I'll read them. I'll go over them in a few minutes. But the 338 Remington Ultra Magnum, which came out in the late 90s, even bigger than the 340 Weatherby, and tremendous amount of powder you're burning, and for all that, you're besting the 338 by 150 to 200 feet per second in velocity over the 338. A lot of punishment for not a lot of gain, in my opinion. The bullet weights have run from 180 to 300 grains over its life. Today you're going to find 180 grain on the light end and 250 if you're going to buy factory ammunition. I haven't seen heavier bullets than 250, even reloading components in quite a while. I do have some reloaded 275 grain spears. I must have loaded them 25 years ago. I shoot a few of them over the chronograph just for when we do the chronograph portion. The ballistics here, Hornady 200 grain ballistic tip, boat tail, got the polymer tip on the end. The muzzle, 3,053 feet a second. That's clocked out of this 24-inch rifle barrel, this Remington. At 100 yards, it's 27.97. 200 yards, 25.58 the velocity. 300 yards, 23.32. 400 yards, 21.17. 500 yards, 1,914 feet a second. The drop, if I zeroed these on a ballistic calculator at 100 yards, so at 200 yards, that 200 grain load is 2.85 inches low. 300 yards is 11 inches low. 400 yards is 25.5 inches low. And 500 yards is 48 inches low. The energy, the muzzle, 4,130 feet a second. 100 yards, 34.74. 200 yards, it'd be 2,907 energy foot-pounds. 300 yards, 24.15. 400 yards, 1,990, and 500 yards, 1,626. The old school rule of thumb was to dispatch an elk or large animal like that, 1,500 foot-pounds of energy striking the animal, and the 338 has that out to 500 yards and more. I did a second load of 250 grain Sierra Game King. The velocity at the muzzle is 2,650 feet a second. At 100 yards, 25.01. 200 yards, 23.56. 300 yards, 22.16. 400 yards, 2,081. And 500 yards, 1949. The drop, 0 at 100, 3.9 inches low at 200, 14.19 inches at 300, 31.5 inches at 400, and 56.8 inches at 500. And the energy, 38.97 at the muzzle, 34.17 at 100, 3,081 at 200, 27.26 at 300, 24.03 at 400, and 21.09 at 500. It's a lot of smack at 500 yards. It's got a ton of energy at 500 yards. I pulled the 30.06 just for comparison. 180 grain Sierra Game King. 2,700 feet a second at the muzzle. The energy at the muzzle is 29.13. So 100 yards, 25.32. 200 yards, 23.70. 300, 22.14. 400, 2,014. 500, 19.20. And then the trajectory. 0 to 100, 200 yards, the 06 is 3.83 inches low. 300 yards, 4.4. 400 yards, 31 inches low. And 500 yards, 56 inches low. Basically tracking the same trajectory as the 250 grain Sierra out of the 330 Win Mag. As far as the energy at the muzzle with the 06, 29.13. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll give you the 500 yard energy, 1,473. So it just drops below the 1,500 foot-pounds. The 30.06 is no slouch, but the 338 has a lot more punch. And due to the wide array of bullet weights, it has a lot more versatility. I got 4 loads I'm going to chronograph. I've shot these before. This will be my 200 grain Hornady. These are all hand loads. I only have one factory load on hand here. These were loaded 15 years ago. I'll give my reloading data, but you should always consult a reloading guide and start out lower than this. It's completely safe on my rifle. 200 grain Hornady ballistic tip, IMR 4831 powder, 74 grains, Winchester primer. Overall length 3.355 thousandths of an inch. So they perform pretty good. The second load I'm going to do is the Hornady, no, it's a Hornady box, I'm sorry. These are 225 grain Sierra Bowtails Game Kings, 225 grains. The third load is going to be Sierra again, Game Kings, Soft Point Bowtail, 250 grains. And the last load is going to be a Spear. And these things I loaded 25 years ago. You can't even get the projectiles. It's a 275 grain Soft Point round nose. And I'll run them over the screens. Eight shots, you know, 2 apiece just to get the general gist of it. I also plan on doing a test. I did it with the 458 Winchester Magnum video. I loaded these a long time ago too. These are Barnes 250 grain round nose solids. It's a solid brass projectile. In the 458 Win Mag video, I fired 308 FMJs into a 13-inch diameter log. I'm going to use the same log. Just going to turn it 90 degrees and shoot 30-06 out of a 24-inch barrel, full metal jacket, and then the 338 solids and see if they'll go through the log. The 458 went sailing right through the log. The 308s, I fired 2 of them. They did not, you know, not even come close. And I'll do a thermal effects test. I'll probably use a 225 Game King. This is any factory ammo I got here. This is Federal Premium Safari. It's got a 250 grain nozzle partition projectile. I'm doing about 2660 Premium Safari. If I get a chance, I'll do a second thermal effects test with that just to check it out. Then we'll go into the rifle. This I've had 29 years, I believe. Remington 700 BDL Deluxe. Very nice rifle. The original Remington company, before it got taken over by Wall Street in 2007. It was around from 1816 to 2007. And it went down from there. They really screwed the company up. And they wanted to put it into bankruptcy. And someone bought off the firearms portion and are remaking new Remington rifles. But they're only in a few calibers. I see they're making a BDL again too, which is good to see. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod and turn this little LED light I got on here so I can light it up. And I'll go over the rifle from the muzzle to the butt pad and the various features. Let me put this on pause. Okay, let me go over the rifle. I got the flashlight here, so hopefully show up. The muzzle is recessed. The crown is set back. Front sight. 24-inch barrel. Very nicely blued. Rich royal blue finish. The rear sight, let's see, illuminated here. I don't know if that comes out. Those are the 2 screws. I have the rear sight in my parts box. Interfered with the bell of the scope. I like mounting the scope as low as you can. 1 in 10 rifle and twist, 24-inch barrel. It's got a very nice walnut high gloss finish. Ebony 4-end tip. Sling swivels. Very nice checkering, diamond checkering on the front of the forestock. Moving back. I have a 3x9 loophole. I think it's a Vari X1. It might be a Vari X2, an older scope. Gloss blue. You don't see that no more. They don't make their gloss blue scopes. They're hard to find. Redfield mounts. Dovetail. Ring mounts. 1-inch scope. 3x9x40 duplex reticle. You notice these 2 dots. These are covering the recoil lugs, metal bolts inside the stock to reinforce it. You always get 2 of them with the Magnum, the heavy Magnum calibers, 338 and above. I don't think I've seen them in a 300 Win Mag. That might be there. Move back. I don't know if we can. I have to put the flashlight on this again. That was too bright. The receiver is engraved. That was a deluxe feature there, as is the floor plate. Being a BDL model, the floor plate opens. This little button in the front of the trigger guard, my finger's pointing, if I push it, the magazine floor plate drops and you could unload the cartridges out of the rifle. I have the bolt out of the gun because it's easier to go over that way. The safety on all Remingtons are rear to stock. Back is safe, forward is fire, just on and off. Trigger breaks at 6 pounds. I adjusted the creep out of it, so it just breaks clean at 6 pounds. Another controversy with the Remington triggers. People didn't know what they're doing, or non-gunsmiths took out the wax plugs and tried to adjust the triggers, and the guns fired when they didn't want them to fire. And some people were injured, some people were killed, but the safety between their ears wasn't working, and they had it pointed in the wrong direction at something they didn't want to put a hole in, either another person or themselves. So get to the pistol grip. Nice checkering, nice ebony cap on the bottom of the pistol grip. Nice gloss drop comb, stock. Nice big thick heavy recoil pad. And put the bolt out of the way here. I'm gonna flip the gun over, and you can see the receiver is engraved, and then the Monte Carlo, raised cheek piece, and it does fit nice. It does point nice. The bolt is jeweled or engine turned. They use like a brush with a lapping compound, and they do overlapping circles down the body of the bolt. Gives a nice attractive finish. Obviously it takes more time to do something like that. It's called engine turning or jeweling. All the Remingtons, the 700s, the Mike Walker, who designed the gun, it was an evolution from the earlier 721 and 722s, long and short action Remingtons. This is a long action Remington. They do have short action, the 308 size cartridges. That's another thing I should mention. This gun was made in '95, I believe. That's when I got it. I bought it new. They machined the receivers out of a solid piece of bar stock, and due to the engineering and the manufacturing savings and time savings, in 1962 when this rifle came out, it forced Winchester to do something similar with their Model 70, which was always a Mauser, external claw action rifle until '64, and you get the lamentations of the post '64 Winchester, basically a push-feed rifle similar to this. Bolts, 2 lugs, 90-degree horizontal, 90-degree throw. So they're riding their races horizontal. When you turn a bolt down, it locks vertical in the receiver. The bolt head's recessed. Completely encases the cartridge head. There's a sheet metal extractor in there that pulls the case out, and a plunger ejector which forces the case out once it clears the chamber. Very innovative design. The trigger and the striker, very fast lock time, one of the fastest on all bolt action rifles. And like I said, the Remington 700's a classic, extremely well-made gun, and I like this one. It's very attractive, and shoots nice. And like I said, if I could only have one hunting rifle, one caliber, it would be this, the 338 Winchester Mag. And obviously the 338 Winchester Mag is made by a number of manufacturers: Savage, Ruger, Winchester, Browning, on and on. With that, let's put this back on a tripod. Alright, now back. Let's give a close-up of the bolt here. I got an empty case here. It's kind of hard to do it manually, but the extractor is in the bolt face. It's a piece of sheet metal, grabs the rim of the cartridge. and the ejector is a little plunger in the face. But the whole bolt head's recessed, so when the case is in there, it's completely surrounded by steel. In case you had a ruptured case, it'll vent the gas, in through the firing pin channel, out this vent hole, away from the shooter. You don't want to do that because you can damage the rifle, but it's very, very strong action. Remingtons are known for their accuracy, part of the design. Trigger, very fast lock work. In fact, the military and the police made them the basis for their precision sniper rifles. Turn that off. The Remington 700P, which I own one in 308. When I was in the police department, I used that for about 12 years. Remington 700P sniper rifle. Very accurate gun, really accurate. The bolt also is, nicely jeweled. They call it jeweling or engine turning, and it makes a very attractive package. The triggers are very nice on these. Like I said, if you have an older Remington, you can tune them where they break 3-4 pounds safely, but you need a experienced gunsmith or somebody knows what they're doing to do that. Don't tamper with yourself. They have wax plugs in there to prevent you from doing that, but some people don't. They get in over their skis there, and that's where you run into problems. I'm going to do the shooting demonstrations and put this rifle through the paces. These various different loads, I forget what I sighted it in for because I haven't shot this in a while. But the one hand load I don't think I have it. I have it somewhere in my stock of stuff. This gun shoots, a little under MOA with hunting bullets. And I don't know if it was the nozzle ballistic tips load on a different load, but I don't have them. But I have what we have here. I'm gonna shoot them. Obviously, the factory loads, you buy something like this, talking almost $5 a shot now. $100 for a box of premium stuff. A little note about reloading. If you do reload, get the versatility of light loads, heavy loads, and but I don't know if this is going to show up. This case here, I don't know if you can see, there's a line going all the way around. When I fired it the other day, this case has been reloaded about 6 times. It's at the end of its life. It's thrown in the garbage. But it cracked at the head, which is what they do when they get work hardened, and you get a little bit of gas escaping. See a little black ring there? You can tell your brass is getting to the end of its life. Sometimes you get a bright ring. It means the brass is stretching and work hardened, and that's just a reloading note. If you're new to reloading, always examine your brass. Like I said, I just have this one out for demonstration, but it'll be on in the trash. And every time I reload, I look at it. If you had a case head rupture, this is a very strong gun. The gas will probably vent out through the magazine. You might damage the gun, might damage the stock, I doubt it'll damage you, but that's a possibility. But these are very strong guns. So you don't want to do that with a piece of, suspect brass. If it looks suspect, throw it away. It's the most expensive part of the cartridge. That's how you save money for loading. I'll do 100-yard accuracy. I'll put it through its paces, and I'll come back for a summary. But like I said, the versatility of the cartridge it really is superb, and I'm a big fan of Remingtons. I'm glad to see some company has acquired them, Rem Arms, I guess they are now, and they're building the guns again. I understand they're pretty well made like the older ones, which is good because they are really good rifles. The original 700s, I think over its lifetime, something like 28 or 29 different calibers. I believe the new batch of Remington 700s that they're coming out with, the company, they might have 6 or 7 calibers. Pretty much the common ones. The biggest caliber I've seen going through their catalog was 300 Winchester Magnum. So obviously no 338, but they made these BDLs in 338, 338 Remington Ultra Mag, 375 H&H, 416 Remington Magnum, another African caliber, 458 Winchester Magnum. So hopefully we're going to get on their feet. You know, maybe as time goes on and there's demand, they'll add a few other calibers. They do have the new PRC calibers. I saw that in their long range rifle, so that's a good sign. With that, we're going to go to the chronograph. I'm going to shoot the log, accuracy. I'm going to do a comparative energy test. My base is always a 223 bolt gun, the Savage. I shoot the little 8-inch plates, ballistic pendulums, but then again do a longer range energy comparison. I have a 14-inch, it's 12 or 14 inches. It's 220 yards at the end of my range there, hanging off a cable. I'll shoot it with the 223. I have a camera, I can zoom in on the plate so you can see the hit, and I'll shoot it with the 338, and you'll note the difference. At, 200 meters, 220 yards, a lot more punch, a considerable amount of punch, and hence the versatility. The recoil is really not something to be scared of. It's not, I'll demonstrate the comparative recoil on camera too with the 223, but it's not bad at all. And that's it. And then do the shooting test, and I'll come back for the summary. Anything I missed. Okay, I'm at the chronograph. I'm going to do 2 shots each, 4 different loads. The first up will be these Hornady 200 grain ballistic tips, or flex tips. A mighty 338 Winchester Magnum. I'll zoom in on the chronograph. We'll fire 2 shots. I'll follow it up with a 225 grain load. 250 grain Sierra Game King load, and I have a 275 grain load also. That is hand load that you can't even find the projectiles anymore. It's more of a round nose type bullet, but 2 shots each should be enough to get a feel for the velocities obtainable with the bullet weights, 200, 275. Useful bullet weights for the 338 over its lifetime. The 338 Win Mag has been 180 to 300 grains. There were 300 grain factory loads at one time, but no more. And I think the only thing you can find on the shelves are 180 to 250. That's the sweet spot. Sweet spot's like 225 for the 338. But I'll zoom in on the chronograph, and we'll get to the shooting. All right, first up, 200 grain ballistic tip. $3,036. $3,053. Next up, 225 grain Sierra Game Kings. Okay, the 225. $2,872, it looks like. And 2,845. Just so I can download all these. These 250 grain Sierra Game Kings. That's what they look like. I don't know if it shows up on the camera. I've shot these before. It says 2650 I should get out of them. We'll give it a shot. All right, the 250. $26.78. And 26.80. Those are the 250 grain Sierra Game Kings. All right, 275 Spear. 23.96. And 24.88. First one was a little light there. Okay. Zoom this out. And flip the screen around. See what I'm doing here. Just on the rain, so you can get one more testing before it rains. The barrel is actually quite hot, just 8 shots. That's all it took to heat that Magnum barrel up. On to the next demonstration. Okay. Yeah, we're running. I haven't done this test or this demonstration since I did my 458 Winchester Magnum video. I'm just curious to see if the 338 will succeed here. What I have is a 13-inch diameter log, the same one I shot with the 458 Winchester Magnum, which went clean through. And I think I used a 308 full metal jacket in comparison. Today I'm going to try full metal jacket 3006, fired out of the same length barrel, 24-inch barrel, this 0383 Springfield, into the log. I have a IPSC target behind the log, and we'll see if it goes through. And then I'm going to follow it up with this Barnes 338 Win Mag 250 grain round nose solid from Barnes. And we'll see if it'll go through this hefty log. This is the actual same log I shot with the 458. It's turned 90 degrees, so it's fresh wood all the way through. So I'm going to zoom in on the log and the target, get a perspective where it, keep it out of harm's way, and we'll be able to see if the 3006 or the 338 penetrates the log. All right, take a look. Nothing. The paper is unharmed. All right, let's try the 338. Yep. Give a close-up on that. The 338 Win Mag went right through. Very little expansion. Let me take this off the tripod. There's a bullet hole. See if that it shows up. It's right there. Entrance. Let's see. Turn the log around. Let me put this camera down for a second. Actually, let me pause it and I'll put it down before I dropped the log on my foot. Turned the log around, and a mighty 338 went sailing right through this big heavy piece of wood. That's the exit, and that's the bullet hole through the paper. So there we have it for a little penetration, straight line penetration demonstration. Okay, I'm at the 100-yard target. I'm just going to shoot 2 3-shot groups. 2 3-shot groups. I'm using the camera at the internal mic. The top target will be the Hornady. Let's do that better. Alright, back at the 100-yard target. Going to do 2 3-shot groups. The top group will be Hornady 200 grain ballistic tip with the polymer tip on the projectile, boat tail projectiles. Kind of a deer round. It's doing about 2,950 feet a second from the muzzle. The bottom group will be 250 grain Sierra Game Kings soft point boat tail projectiles. They're doing about 2,650 out of the muzzle at 100 yards. So 3 shots top group, 3 shots bottom group. Ammo's expensive. You know, you're talking $3 a shot there. We'll see how they group. I'm going to walk back to 100. And I'm going to zoom the camera in so you can see the hits. That should do it. Okay. All right. These are 250s. About 2.5 high. I think I have them 0 to 200. Got to measure. It's about a 2 MOA group. And all right, let's see. All right, I got to talk loud into this camera. These were the 200 grain ballistic tips. I believe the gun's zeroed for these 250s. 2 inches, 2.5 inches high at 100. So that'd be like dead on at 200, 2.25. These are about 4 inches high. The ballistic tips. That shows you the point of impact shift with different bullet weights and different velocities. Obviously, you're going to use this 200 grain load, say deer hunt. I would zero it maybe 2 inches high at 100, so it'd be dead on 200. But that's you know, typical non-match, you know, Game King bullet accuracy. This is probably 1 3/4 inches, and this is probably 2. The one I actually pulled because I went lower on a bench in a rifle, and it punched me pretty hard, so I think I flinched on that one. Otherwise the group would have been tighter. But we'll deal with that in the summary. And let me shut this down. Okay, comparative recoil test. 55 grain 223 versus 250 grain 338 Winchester Mag. Sure, running. I'll aim at the 50 yards so I have something to hit. Nothing. Now for the 338. Okay, I shoot my 50-yard torso target. Ooh, just about knocked it over. That's a mighty 338. Recoil ain't bad. That's pretty heavy load. So on to our next test. I'm going to do my comparative energy test. I got 8-inch, 3/8 inch AR 500 plates there. Ballistic pendulum, if you will. The baseline is always a 223, 5.56, 55 grain M193 load. I'm going to shoot the center plate to 223. And then I'm going to shoot a 250 grain spear soft point bolt tail at the right plate. The energy comparison from the 338 Win Mag. Doing about 2,700 feet a second out of the muzzle. I'm going to leave the camera back here 15 yards or so, and I'm going to zoom in on it. And then after that, I'm going to do a comparative recoil test. Same two rifles. Close up on me shooting them, just to show the difference in recoil. And I'm only out here in a t-shirt. So let me zoom in and we'll get to it. First up, 223, center plate. Now the 338 Win Mag on the right plate. 250 grain spear. And as you can see there, quite a bit of energy. About 4,000 foot-pounds or close to it. Okay, going to do a comparative energy test at distance. That 14-inch plate back there that the camera's focused on is 220 yards or 200 meters. I'm going to fire a 55 grain 223 at it, and then followed up by 250 grain Sierra Game King 250 grain boat tail saw point. First up, the 223. Okay, that was a 223. Now the 338. And as you can see there, a lot more smack. A whole lot more energy imparted at 220 yards. Okay, I'm back. I do a thermal effects test. I got the camera moved back a good 15 yards because it got dosed the other day with a shotgun slug test, and it was acting up. So I'll zoom in. You should be able to see it fine. For this test, I'm going to use the Sierra Game King 225 grain. That's kind of the sweet spot for the 338 Win Mag.
boat tail soft point. Good game load. It's doing about 2880, 2,880 feet a second out of the muzzle. I've numbered the target. My turnable target's an analog for a game animal or an adversary. 6-inch water jugs, followed by 3/4 inch ply between each water jug. The first three are 3/4 inch sheets of plywood. First three water jugs are all numbered. Fourth water jug, a 2x8. A fifth water jug, another piece of plywood. I don't know if I'll capture the projectile or I will or will not, but we'll see. They're all numbered too, so I don't mix the jugs up. And I'm going to zoom in, we'll take the shot, and then come back for the results. Let me do the autopsy on this, and I'll pause this and we'll get back for the... Okay, I only captured a part of the bullet. It blew up in the third water jug, hit the third piece of plywood and bounced off, broke apart. But good performance for a deer hunting style bullet, or even for heavier game, elk or larger game. First jug got vaporized, second jug got vaporized. After going through the water, went through the first 3/4 inch piece of ply. Now it's already expanding. Big hole, big exit hole. All right, it's a fresh piece of plywood. Second piece of plywood. Entrance, much bigger. Exit. There's a little chunk of lead there. I guess the projectile's starting to fracture. So went through the 2 water jugs and the 2 sheets of plywood, which is a good result. It's go right through both shoulder bones of a big game animal, bear, elk, moose. You're probably better off with a 250 if you're going after bear. This is the back end of the projectile. It's just peeled. It's a fragment. I don't know where the rest of it went. I may find it later on. It's kind of overcast here. Went through the third jug. Caught the top of it. It must have been traveling up. Come out here. Went in there. Went in there. Come out the handle. And put this big divot in the third sheet of 3/4 inch ply. So like I said, a good result. It's a good hunting rifle bullet. Mainly optimized for longer range deer hunting or mule deer or sheep. 225 is kind of a sweet spot. It's got the same kind of trajectory as a say 165, 180 grain 30-06, but a lot more energy. That's probably almost, I have to do the figures, but it's probably almost 4,000 pounds of energy, or 3,800 pounds of energy. So with that, on to our next. Okay, I decided to repeat the terminal effects test with the only factory ammunition I have. This Federal Premium Safari. It's 2660 at the muzzle. And I wrote on the box, I must have zeroed the gun. 0 to 200 yards. It's loaded with 250 grain Nosler partition projectile. These usually do pretty good in a penetration test. So I'm going to try one shot at our target. I'm going to zoom in on the water target. I got a second camera on just in case this one fails. And we'll see if we get lucky and recover this, or most of it. Quite an explosion. All right. Let me pause both cameras and autopsy this. Okay, did not recover the projectile. A lot of energy dumped there. I'll go through it. I'll bring the components up. There's all that's left of the first water jug. Just vaporized. There's chunks all over the forest here. First piece of plywood. This was the first hit from the 225. I marked it. This is the second hit. You see expansion starting. Not as big as hole as the 225 Game King. There is a little chunk of lead stuck in the wood there. I guess the projectile started coming apart. And second jug hit kind of low, just blew it to smithereens, and the hit on the board is low too. That's the entrance. That's the exit, second piece of plywood. Not as expanded as much as partitions shouldn't. They shouldn't open up that much, like a soft point. Number 2. This is number 4. This is part of, might be part of 1. Hard to tell. I believe I marked this for impact. Shredded the jug. There's some lead fragments on the table, and a deeper penetration to the third piece of plywood. Big divot. There's a little lead stuck in there. Everything I recovered is a couple of lead fragments that were in one jug laying behind the stand. Obviously, the energy dump knocked all the other water jugs off. But, you know, Federal loads them with these nice nickel cases. You know, premium ammunition. You know, good big game round, big large game. Elk, moose, bear. You know, you get a lot of straight line penetration. Water is just an analog. It's cheap. It's easy target to set up. You set it up anywhere. It doesn't cost you much. The analogs are heavy bone or a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. Punch clean through the 2 sheets and heavily damage the third. So that's more than ample penetration for any large game animal. But that's it. I was just curious to run a second test. And that's the results of our second test with the 250 grain nozzle petition doing 2650. And what really ain't fair to either bullet is they're not designed to impact a game animal that, 10 yards, 100 yards. They have a parameter where they're designed to, expansion threshold. It's optimized 200 yards. At close range, it, violently affects the projectile. Ballistic gelatin is 90% water. This is 100% water. It's a lot cheaper. But that'll be it for this terminal effects test. We'll go on to our next thing. Okay, I'm back for my summary on the mighty 338 Winchester Magnum and the very versatile 338 Winchester Magnum, and the Remington very fine 700 BDL rifle. One thing I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you're looking to take a bolt out of any Remington, the bolt release is inside the trigger guard. Little button here, you push up and the bolt comes right out, and you put it back in. And safe, and obviously forwards fire. One other thing, if you don't want to dry fire the gun, you pull the trigger back if the chamber is obviously the gun is empty as you're closing the bolt, and just releases a striker without firing. Chronograph results, I got them here. The first load was a 200 grain Hornady ballistic tip. Velocity averaged 3,044 feet per second, and the energy foot-pounds was 4,117 foot-pounds. In context, that load has more energy at 300 yards than the 30-06 does at the muzzle. The Sierra Game King 225 grain Sierra boat tail soft point. Velocity averaged 2,858 feet per second, and the energy foot-pounds was 4,082. The Sierra Game King 250 grain Sierra boat tail soft nose averaged 2,679 feet per second, and the energy was 3,985. And finally, the last load, the Spear 275 grain round nose soft point. The velocity averaged 2,442, and the energy was 3,642. That would be more like a heavy game animal woods load, 100 yards, 150 yards, a round nose projectile. This hand load here with the brass, the Barnes 250 grain round nose, I didn't chronograph, but I did chronograph them prior, and it's 2,590 feet per second. That's what it's listed as, that I've shot it before. Like I said, I've done it, these loads are old, 20 years or more. I can't make out the date, that's how old it is. No, 25 years, 96, 95, yeah. So, did the log test like I did with the 338 Winchester Magnum, the 458 Winchester Magnum in an earlier video. 150 grain M2 ball, 3006 full metal jacket out of a 24-inch barreled 1903 A3 rifle. Nothing, didn't penetrate near, probably not even half into that log. The 338 solid went whistling right through. And I got the target. It's right here. Let's see. Yeah, there's the hole. And there's all this wood shrapnel, embedded into the cardboard as it blasted out the back of the log. We want to clean through right into the backstop, the hill. And that just shows you the straight line penetration of this cartridge with the right projectile. You could take any game animal in the world with that. That would penetrate an elephant, the skull and their whole head, and body shot, or a Cape buffalo. Obviously, it's illegal in most of the African countries because the caliber is too little. But right bullet, 338, it's very versatile. Did the accuracy test. Like I said, I just picked the two loads. I picked the 200 grain Hornady I had loaded here, and the 250 grain Sierra Game King. And I do have hand loads for this that are more accurate. That one I believe I threw. This is the 250 grain group. The 2-inch groups, 2 MOA, which is perfectly adequate for any hunt rifle. It really is. This is slightly less than 2 MOA. This was the 200 grain Hornady. This was the 250 Sierra Game King. Perfectly adequate. Did the comparative recoil test. The base rifle is always a Savage Axis in 223 Remington, 55 grain bullet. It's obviously the recoils, you don't feel anything with that. Fired a 250 grain Sierra Game King, and it's a heavy recoil load with a 225. I'm unclear. It's in the video though. Both of them are heavy recoil loads, the 225 or the 250, and the recoil is not severe, unmanageable. break your shoulder. You know, it's very controllable. Actually, I shot at the little A-zone torso plate that's on a 2x4 with both the 223, and when I hit it with the 338 in the video, the whole thing just about fell over into the tree. I had to go straighten it out. And it knocked the whole stand over, which was a demonstration of its energy. Did the comparative energy test, the little ballistic pendulum, the 8-inch AR 500 plates. Center plate was a 223. Pop, you see the energy imparted. The 338 almost whips it off its, whips it all the way around. I did a distance comparative energy test because I have the one camera that can focus, out to 220 yards there where that plate is hanging. 223 pings the plate, and then the 338 really racks it at 220 yards. So it's carrying a lot of steam going down range. Did the terminal effects test. Did two of them. Did one with the 225 grain load, which is this one. Oh, sorry, this one here. 225 Sierra game thing. That's kind of the sweet spot for the 331 mag. It's right in the middle of the bullet weights. Vaporized 1 jug of water, went through 3/4 inch piece of plywood. You got the plywood here. This is number 1. It was expanding in the water already. You can see the hole getting bigger. Big exit hole. Through another jug of water, vaporized. Blew through the second piece of 3/4 inch ply. Really starting to expand now. And the one in orange is the 225. And then the exit hole. Third jug of water destroyed. It hit the plywood behind it, put a big heavy divot in it. And the only thing I found that was laying on top of the 55-gallon drum is this little chunk of lead. You see part of the base of the bullet. It just folded itself inside out. I then repeated the test. And I think the second test, I had 2 cameras running with the Safari grade Federal factory stuff. 250 grain nozzle petition, soft point. The front part of this petition is supposed to expand, and the back part's supposed to hold together. They're separated. There's like an H in there, like a wall separating the 2 halves of the bullet. And obviously, when you fire any bullet from 10 yards, which it's really not designed to be shot into a game animal at 5 or 10 yards, and expand properly, like you see in the advertisement. But did the same thing. The third piece of plywood that is struck after I vaporized the 3 water jugs went through the 2 first 3/4 inch pieces of ply. Big shoulder bones on a big game animal. I didn't mark them, but this is number 1. That's the entrance and the exit. Less expansion, as you expect out of a partition. Second piece of plywood, it starts to expand a little bit more. There's the entrance. There's the exit, blew right out. It hit the third piece of plywood and really bulged the back of it and put a big knot in it. And the only thing I found was these 2 little pieces of lead that were laying on top of the 55-gallon drum, which was clean before I shot. So, the front portion of the bullet, it just fragmented. A lot of stress on the bullet at that close range and high impact velocity. The 250s are doing 2650, and the 225 is doing almost 2,900 feet a second. So, but good performance. It'd take down any game animal that you're likely to run into in North America, for sure. Thermal effects test, comparative recoil. Put it through its paces, give a good demonstration. There's all my brass from shooting. I put it back down on my reloading bench there. I do have a good selection of 338, different hand loads. I got other hand loads still, but the solid is pretty impressive. Going through 13 inches of wood like that. modest velocity. And the 458, same thing, 500 grain solid. It's only doing 2,000 feet a second, but it was whistling right through the log. What else can I say about the pre-2007 Remingtons? They were made, these 700s made since 1962. If you acquire one in good shape in a used gun shop, or they're very fine rifles. They made many different models and variations, varmint guns, hunting guns, heavy hunting rifles, elegant hunting rifles. This is what I consider an elegant hunting rifle, elegant looking, if you're hunting in swamps and heavy rain, obviously you don't want to be soaking your nice wood stock in heavy rain if you can avoid it. You get a synthetic stock rifle. From what I see with the new Remington 700s, the post 2021s by the new company, they appear, and what I read, they're the quality of, approaching the quality of the earlier ones. Sadly, the Wall Street people destroyed Remington. It was around for almost 200 years. Very fine American manufacturer. With that, I'm going to end my video. If you like this content, like and subscribe, and make comments, whatever. If they pop up on my thing, I'll respond if you get a question. Question or comment, it's always welcome. And that's all I can say. Like I said, that'll be the end of this video. The mighty 338 Winchester Magnum and the Remington 700 BDL rifle video. And this old gun guy, good evening.